Hi everyone, welcome to a little bit of a strange video. This is, as you saw from the title, the second episode in my Let's Make a Monster series. If anyone remembers my first one, it was a long time ago. I really enjoyed it, and I think it performed well, but for this one I wanted to try something a little bit different and sort of talk about it in a more train of thought way rather than writing out a full script. I think that this might be better because I think a script kind of gets cheesy at some points, and also sitting down and writing something, I will tend to critique myself a lot and just never get stuff done because I think it's not good enough. So by forcing myself to just kind of get it out here, I think that I will be able to make more of this stuff because I really did enjoy it and I have some really cool ideas I want to get out there. So this is the train of thought second version of Let's Make a Monster. Let's just get into it. So I have an idea, and it has to do with the way that vampires are depicted in media and stories. Something I noticed. A lot of times when you have a world and you include vampires in it, vampires are just straight up an upgrade to humans. They are way stronger, way faster. Sometimes they come with weaknesses like sunlight, but other times, like in Twilight, they're just superpowered people. There's no downside. You get to live forever. You get to fly. Sometimes you get to shapeshift. So the issue that comes up a lot of times if you want to have a world, say a D&D setting, where vampires exist and are sprinkled about the world, the one problem that you run into is that, especially with your villains, there's really no reason to have one that isn't a vampire, right? Like maybe the thing is that the ritual or whatever process it is to become a vampire is pretty horrible and evil, which is sort of used to explain why everyone isn't a lich as well. But you could do that, or you can say, you know, there are weaknesses. You gotta stay inside. You can't go out during the daytime. But honestly, like, for how overpowered you get, and for how much raw power and pretty easily gained eternal life you get from the ritual, I think that most villains, and obviously you can write them in a certain way, but most villains are just gonna want to be a vampire. And honestly, if it is in something like a D&D case, most players are going to want to be too, because that, like, just staying out at night in exchange for a boatload of superpowers and eternal life, that's a good deal. So I had an idea that would help have them still exist, but have them not be so ubiquitous, in adding a bit of risk to the transformation into a vampire. And that is today's monster. So this monster I have named Arrythmius. It is a massive human heart creature with eyes, a big mouth in the middle bisecting it with horrible fangs, and tendrils that come out of the top of it and act like legs or pseudopods, tentacles with sharp teeth or horns on the end to use as weapons. And this will occur naturally when whatever method you use to turn into a vampire goes wrong. Whether it's you were bitten by one, but it wasn't for the exact amount of time, you got too much venom, wrong time of night, or you got bitten, you didn't go through whatever extra steps, or if it's more like a ritual thing which turns you into a vampire, if you mess up the ritual even slightly or do it at the wrong time, whatever happens, whatever process turns you into a vampire in your world, and Arrythmius is what occurs when you mess up. So basically, whatever energy or venom or substance that turns you into a vampire all coagulates in the heart, and it will act a full transformation, but only on the heart, which will turn it into a separate vampiric entity, completely separate from the normal human, who is just a normal squishy human, just full of blood. And when you have something inside of you that has all the bloodlust of a whole vampire in a tiny human heart shape, it's going to want some. So an Arrythmius will start off the size of a heart, and when the ritual goes wrong, it'll sort of transform. The transformation is marked with irregular heart beating, which is where the name comes from. Arrhythmia is a medical term meaning irregular heartbeat. So Arrythmius is sort of an irregularity in vampirism. Anyway, the transformation will begin with an irregular heartbeat, which starts to increase faster and faster, and then you'll start getting extreme pain in your chest as the transformation goes underway, and it starts to sprout the eyes and the fangs in the arteries. And when the sort of mouth splits open, at that point you're probably almost dead. But if you're not, the fact that the arteries are breaking out and the thing is now starting to consume you from the inside, that will kill you. So the host will never survive being an Arrythmius, which is risk enough for most people to say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a vampire, because if I mess up even slightly, there's going to be an Arrythmius that's going to rip out itself as my heart and is going to eat me alive. But that risk alone is not really going to cut it. It needs to not only be a danger to you, but to everyone else. And there is a fully formed vampiric creature that is now free on the world. So, starting off, an Arrythmius pretty much has only an instinct to hunt and eat. Being a vampiric creature, it will crave blood. And just endlessly too, because it's so concentrated. But rather than bothering with fangs or waiting, it just eats the person whole, and whatever isn't consumed in the blood is just added onto its mass. So over time it'll get bigger and bigger. Now it starts very small, which allows it to move very fast, and it moves by sort of just like using its artery tendrils as pseudopods, sort of pulling itself. But when it's very small, it can cling to ceilings, fling itself from tree to tree, and it moves incredibly fast. And it pretty much never stops hunting and eating. And it'll continue whether it's hunting animals or humans, anything with blood really. It will come to it, either just strangle it or lunge at it and tear it apart. Being a heart and being vampiric, it has very powerful regenerative properties, so even if you fight back, it's going to grow back a lot of it. As long as it has access to blood, it has an incredible healing factor. And yet, pretty much it's very fast, strong, and dangerous, as most vampires are. And as it continues to eat more and more, it just gets bigger and bigger, until eventually it gets too big to really justify being above ground out in the open, because it is still a vampire, and in a lot of cases that means burning in the sun or turning to dust in the sun. So if it's too slow to really move around, first of all, it's going to be too slow to continue hunting, but it's also going to be too slow to get into a place of darkness when the sun starts to rise. So at that point it will elect to try and find either a cave or maybe an old rundown building, somewhere dark and secluded, so that it can protect itself from the sun, and it'll sort of just use its pseudopods, its arteries, to hang from the ceiling, but it will still have one, and really a couple, that hang below which it can use to fight, and it'll kind of just stay there and sort of beat rhythmically, and basically conserve its energy as much as it can, and try and lure whatever it can into its cave, and then it'll eat and consume, and it'll just keep growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's basically what the monster does. I had a collective noun for my last one. Arrythmius, first of all, is very awkward to use in plural, because I don't know if it's Arrythmiuses or Arrhythmii, which is very clumsy. But really there's never going to be more than one that meet each other, because they will instantly attack and consume each other upon meeting, given that they have no way to reproduce or no need to, and they certainly don't hunt in packs. So you're never going to find more than one Arrythmius. But yeah, I think using this, first of all, as a narrative device to stop everyone from clamoring to be a vampire, and also as a creature, just a human heart, a giant heart hanging from the ceiling, attacking, regenerating quickly. Maybe you have to fight it to stop livestock from disappearing, or stop the rhythmic psychic beat, which is sort of driving the townsfolk crazy over time, that they can never really tell where it's coming from, but they can hear it beating. I'm not really forming a coherent sentence. I'm sort of just going off. But I think you can use it in as a monster, as an enemy, in whether it be a RPG campaign or in a story you're doing. I think that this is a cool monster based off a heart for your creative settings. So let me know if you like this sort of more train of thought off the script version. I personally enjoy how much time it saves, and also the pain it saves me from continuously writing and deleting and writing. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe because I'm going to do more of these. Of course, if you want to be notified immediately, you've heard this a million times before, but there is a bell. Given that I am a pretty small channel, the bell is the best way to be notified of when I get a new video out. Let me know in the comments some ways you would use the Arrythmius, and if you have any other ideas for some cool monsters you'd like me to flesh out, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I think that would be pretty fun. Anyway, I'll see you all later, and goodbye.